Thank you to the TWID team. And thank you to Kate Wills for really creating this incredible space today where we get to share and delve into all the amazing facets of mohair and wool, and especially for creating a space specifically towards textiles in the fashion education system, which is something that is an integral part of all the conversations that we are having today. My name is Leandi Mulder, and I have been involved in fashion and textile world for just over 10 years now as a student and an educator and as a designer. And I currently spend most of my time at the Design Academy of Fashion. When I think back to the very beginning of my journey, I remember also being a starry-eyed and highly ambitious fashion student. So there is a global kind of design principle that we were taught by at school, which is really placing an importance on unlimited creativity. So this way is to teach you to conceptualize, first of all, come up with big dreams, then sketch up a completely new and personal look, and finally step into the place of creating your patterns and your calico mock-ups. Only from here, from this very step, do we then have to pause and work all the way back into finding that specific fabric. So there was something that is not right. Spending time truly integrating and understanding fashion and textiles, thinking about their characteristics, their functions, or even just the fiber composition, this wasn't really part of the fashion process that we were taught. Surface aesthetic was there, and the drape matched the fabric. Then we kind of got the green light to go ahead with cutting and sewing our garments. However, this way of thinking just really didn't sit right with me. I felt like there were so many steps missing, or perhaps some of the steps were in the wrong order. There are really so many intricacies that go into designing, patterning, and constructing a single clothing item. And it just became more and more difficult to reconcile the craftsmanship that goes into this process with the astronomical scale of clothing that fills all of our lives and our retail spaces and our landfills. So as my questions grew and I learned more and more about the devastating environmental impact of this industry, it really became inevitable to change the way in which I design. So for me, that change all started with textiles. In the dusty storage units of my then university, I literally discovered rooms full of old, forgotten hand table weaving looms. I became absolutely obsessed with these archaic contraptions, dedicating hours to teaching myself how to weave and literally painstakingly weaving 30 centimeters widths of fabric. I used upcycled and natural materials to knit, crochet, and stitch work myself into a frenzy, all in an effort to really try and avoid fabric stores as much as possible. In 2017, I enrolled in a master's program in fashion design and innovation at the Beijing University of Fashion and Technology. And here I really deepened my research on natural fibers, specifically focusing on mohair. I wrote my thesis on exploring mohair in the context of fashion and sustainability. This period really gave me the space to contemplate the way in which I design, dedicating time to truly understanding a fiber from all of its facets, engaging deeply with the possibilities of what it can become, as well as understanding all of its limitations and challenges. And then obviously in Beijing, I had the incredible opportunity to engage with cutting edge technologies and exploring all this amazing universities, facilities firsthand. I then came back home to South Africa to pair all of these knowledges with hands-on experience in the South African design industry. And I met with many textile designers who have dedicated their whole lives to working with local natural fiber. And this included sitting for hours with Adele's mohair team on her farm in Port Alfred, trying to learn to spin with mohair, or spending a week with the talented Stephanie Bentham in her studio to physically learn about her amazing hand felting practices. And then also to travel all the way to Prince Albert and really to immerse myself into the environment of the Angora goats with Frans van Hasselt in his studio and on her family farm. There really simply was no turning back from here, because once you understand how a fiber looks, how it feels, how it moves, how it absorbs light or reflects light, it begins to design every single part of your thinking. It informs your textile choices, your methods of construction, your silhouettes, and sometimes even your color palettes. And when you then take this and connect it to the origin of the fiber, really where it comes from, your entire design process has to shift. Design becomes ingrained in intention, and it really carries the memory of the plants, the animals, and the hands that brought it into being. Most importantly, it just simply invites a different kind of respect, one that is rooted in process, in place, in people, and in practice. One of the central relationships in this journey has been with a longtime friend and design partner, Francis van Hasselt, who I'm sure some of you know. Francis's design practice is grounded in a deep understanding of mohair, shaped by her family's upbringing, which is in Prince Albert. Her approach to fiber and making is intuitive, respectful, and generous. It has really been a privilege to work both with her and to learn from her over these years. And I believe that she really exemplifies what lived experience is and what it means to work within a true farm to fashion and fabric model. Together, we've developed quite a few collections over the years, which really foreground mohair and natural fibers, showing its versatility both through knitwear and woven collections. We've also undertaken residencies in Japan and Italy, where we had the opportunity to learn from master textile artisans and innovators, and then taking our thinking and embedding it in a local context. Most recently, we have facilitated farm to fabric teaching courses at some international institutions, which includes Mulder, Parsons, and FIT. These workshops have connected these international students, many of them who had no previous connection to South Africa or really understood anything about our fibers, to our ecosystems, our processes, and to our philosophies. A defining takeaway has been seeing how when students fully immerse themselves in the value of a material, they begin to design differently, with more care and more meaning. A simple yarn, I think someone said it earlier, can become a narrative thread, and this can develop into a textile that is inspired and shaped with meaning and purpose. So these fashion experiences that we went through clarified how international collaboration, local fiber, textile craftsmanship, and fashion is all deeply connected, and why the relationship between fiber origin, textile design, and fashion must never be broken. So, why are we bringing it home? Why are we bringing mohair, natural fiber, wool, and textiles back into the curriculum at DAF? It's simple. Our fashion industry cannot change if education stays the same. Rewiring our thinking literally starts within the classroom. We have to begin by asking, what does our fashion education system look like? Why does it look like this? And what are we educating and upskilling our students for? After the collapse of the industry in South Africa for textiles in the 1990s, we saw a slow dismantling of education programs, all related in the fashion industries, from fiber to weaving to knitting and textile design. Whole departments shut down, machines rusted, looms were stacked in the university storage rooms and forgotten, and an entire generational loss of knowledge occurred. And as the industry faded, so did our investment into textile literacy. Today, most fashion curricula in South Africa only focus on surface level fabrication. So fashion and textiles have become so disconnected across universities, into retail industries, and design practices. A real knowledge of textiles, from fiber composition, construction complexities, and finishes, in my opinion, are quite literally endangered. I see this every year when my first years walk into the classroom and they do not know that polyester comes from the petroleum industry. And they do not know that cotton is not a fabric, it's a fiber. And that felting, weaving, and knitting are not just crafts, they're actually important acts of storytelling and of design. At DAV, we are trying to rebuild this bridge. Our existing curriculum is designed to place value on sustainability, innovation, and hands-on learning. As a small institution, we've been able to adapt and introduce a parallel focus on textiles across all of our student years. With the invaluable support and partnership from Mohair South Africa, every student at DAF engages with, on some level or another, with an education model that is centered around understanding fiber from its very source, rather than starting with a finished look or just a simple surface level aesthetic. We teach about the environment. We teach about the animals and the herders. We teach about the shearers, the spinners, and the weavers. We teach about the textile artisans and really the endless possibilities of what South African mohair and wool can become. This approach highlights the importance of preserving traditional craftsmanships in a modern context and honoring long-held knowledges while preparing our students for future design potentials. We've also established a humble textile studio on campus, complete with table looms, flat-back knitting machines, other equipment, and a room full of mohair and wool fiber and yarn, so that our students can engage directly with the physicality of making. What makes this way of teaching truly special is that each student is invited into the ecosystem in a deeply personal way. We are not just teaching skills. We are cultivating a mindset that values South African fiber, our ecology, our shared histories, and the slow, meaningful act of making. What we've discovered is that tactile knowledge is emotional knowledge. When students touch a hand-spun mohair yarn, they feel the difference between a wash, carded, and a raw fiber. Something innately shifts in each of them. They understand immediately what makes each fiber so special, what wool acts and looks like, how it differs from mohair, and the emotion that is embedded within the material. It teaches them to make with care, with attention and respect, and it results in a beautiful garment that has a stole and that really tells a story. This is why we believe that students should not just learn about textiles, they should make them. They should dye their own yarns. They should card their own fibers. They should knit, weave, and felt their own fabrics. Not to become textile designers or artisans or even experts necessarily, but just to become thinkers who are grounded and who understand the impact of every single choice that they make. So we teach, firstly, theoretical knowledge, where fiber comes from, how ecosystems interact, who the role players are, and how the animals live. We are so lucky to have Francis van Hasselt come to our campus every year and teach a farm to fabric masterclass, inspiring students with conversations about the Karoo, the animals, and land of design. We secondly teach about tactile knowledge, the feeling, the look, the shine and the smell of a raw fiber, how it behaves when it's wet, how it looks when it's spun, when it's felted, woven, or knitted. And we've had some incredible teachers offer up their time and space to inspire our students. Some of them are even in this room today. We have Hanali from Rack to Knitwear, who teaches our students to use those initially very intimidating black bait knitting machines. We also have Renal Jordan, who is on the panel, who invites all of our students into her personal studio so that they can meditate their way into felting the most beautiful fabrics. And Cowboy Blues with Bridget Henderson, who teaches us how mohair can so beautifully absorb dye and color, just to name a few. And finally, the third thing that we teach, and we've had a lot of conversations about this today, is collaborative knowledge. How working with and learning from designers, peers, and local practitioners can transform not only the process, but also each student's final outcome. I truly, truly believe that these teachings, no matter how big or small, has an invaluable ripple effect. I am constantly inspired by the enthusiasm and incredible creativity that our students are expressing. The way that they can now talk about natural fibers, about wool, and about mohair. The way that they have created entire looks on their own with newly learned textile skills. They kind of just get it in a way that I never could. To close, I'd like to share the words of one of our students who said much better than I ever could. So this is a small snippet from Luta Uzineman, who took part in a recent textile collaboration that we did. These are her words. We didn't just crochet or weave. We started from scratch, creating our own yarns by hand. From dyeing to spinning unevenly charmed threads, I learned how much texture and personality lives in every strap. Mohair has a mind of its own, springy, soft, a little wild, which forced me to slow down, stay present, and actually listen to the material. Yes, mohair talks back. What really stuck with me is how much narrative and energy can live in a textile work. Every inch of a tapestry holds memory, a conversation, a laugh, a challenge, a breakthrough. It's more than a final piece. It's a woven map of the process. Thank you all so much for having me share this with you today. And I really hope that by nurturing and reviving this lost language of education and fiber and textiles, we can really grow more grounded thinkers, more respectful designers, and more courageous change makers for the future of the South African textile industry.